Okay, some films don't waste breath. They cut deeper, with silence, with stillness, with one look that tells you everything. These 10 don't say much, but they linger. In your gut, in your memory, and way after the credits fade. The Naked Prey, 1965. No backstory, no monologue, just a man, barefoot and hunted. The Naked Prey wastes no time. Within minutes, civilization is gone, rituals vanish, language disappears, and all that remains is motion, running, hiding, surviving. Cornell Wilde, who also directed, plays a nameless guide stripped of everything but instinct. Shot in Zimbabwe and Namibia, the production used real terrain, real wildlife, and often real danger. Wilde wanted the environment to breathe, and it does. Sun-scorched savannas, snakes slithering through dust, spears whistling past the camera. Every sound is sharp, every silence, sharper. Dialogue? Minimal. Most of the film plays out in panting, footfalls, and glances. The chase becomes ritual, the land becomes language, and survival turns into something almost spiritual. What's remarkable is how little exposition the film needs. You feel every decision, every hesitation, every flicker of fear or mercy. And through it, The Naked Prey becomes something more than a thriller. It becomes a meditation on endurance, on perspective, on what strips us down and what builds us back. There are no heroes here, no speeches, just one man running through heat and hunger and the silence that refuses to let him rest. The words may be few, but none of them are wasted. When Sorcerer opened in 1977, audiences thought they were getting a horror film. It had the same director as The Exorcist, same ominous vibe. Even the name sounded supernatural. But there's no demon, no sorcery. Just 4 desperate men and 2 trucks carrying nitroglycerin across collapsing bridges in the jungle. It was a remake. Sorcerer reimagines the 1953 French classic The Wages of Fear, but turns up the realism, the chaos, the existential dread. William Friedkin risked everything on this. He flew his cast and crew into the harshest corners of the Dominican Republic, Mexico, and even the jungles of Veracruz. The shoot ran over a year. The budget ballooned to over $20 million, a wild sum back then. And that bridge scene? Built from scratch, then rebuilt when the first one collapsed. Waited weeks for the right storm. Real wind, real rain, real terror. Every inch of this movie feels soaked in sweat and dread. The camera doesn't flinch. You feel the weight of every tire, every bolt, every second. It flopped. Star Wars had just opened. Nobody wanted moral ambiguity. They wanted lightsabers, but now, it's a cult masterpiece. No magic, no monsters, just the quiet terror of a truck and a ticking cargo that doesn't forgive. Woman in the Dunes, 1964. This guy went looking for bugs and ended up trapped in a hole for the rest of his life. Woman in the Dunes doesn't need a monster. It gives you sand. Endless, clinging, choking sand. A school teacher gets lured into a pit, and when he wakes up, there's no ladder. Just a woman. A shovel. And the quiet reality that this is where he lives now. Director Hiroshi Teshigahara filmed in an actual sand pit, reshaped daily by the crew to keep it unstable. The actors performed everything, hauling buckets, stumbling in the heat, sinking into the dunes. No soundstage, no safety net. Every shot feels like it's breathing and watching. There's almost no dialogue, no music, just the scrape of wood, wind across a ridge, sweat hitting dry earth, and a man slowly realizing he's not a prisoner, he's becoming a resident. By the time the film ends, you can't tell if he's still trying to escape, or if he even wants to. Woman in the Dunes didn't just win awards, it rewired people. It's been screened by psychology departments, cited in philosophy texts. Because once you see it, you start asking the same thing. What if you stopped climbing out? What if the routine became your life? It's slow, it's quiet, and it never lets you forget it. Quest for Fire, 1981. Grunts, firelight, mud, and something that feels like wonder. Drops us 80,000 years into the past. No subtitles, no modern language, just early humans trying to survive, evolve, and understand. Directed by Jean-Jacques Annaud, the film hired linguist Anthony Burgess to create a proto-language and mime coach Desmond Morris to design body gestures. Every snarl, nod, and stare carries weight. What could have been a gimmick becomes hypnotic. The story follows a small tribe desperate to reclaim fire, a sacred, life-sustaining mystery. But what they find along the way isn't just survival, it's curiosity, fear, laughter, grief, and maybe love. Shot across Kenya, Canada, and Scotland, production was brutal. Crews hiked for miles, actors wore furs in sweltering heat. The mud was real, the stares were earned, and the silence, that's where the emotion lives. The film never pauses to explain itself. It doesn't need to. You feel it. When a hand reaches out for warmth, when a creature pauses before killing, when laughter erupts and surprises even the characters. This is not just about the past, it's about first contact with each other, with empathy, with meaning. And by the end, one thing is clear. Before we had words, we already had feelings. And some of them still burn. The Naked Island, 1960. No words. No narration. Just breath, labor, and water that never arrives easily. Shot on a tiny island in Japan's Seto Inland Sea, The Naked Island is one of the quietest films ever made and one of the loudest in feeling. Director Kaneto Shindo told the story with no dialogue, no exposition, only movement, only rhythm. A family of 4 survives by hauling water up steep slopes, over and over, day after day. The actors performed real labor, carrying buckets, rowing boats, planting crops. No doubles, no tricks. Each shot captures exhaustion, not as a performance, but as fact. The camera lingers on muscles straining, hands shaking, faces set against wind. Even the film's score waits, appearing only when emotion overflows the frame. This is not a survival thriller. It's a portrait of persistence. Routine becomes drama. A spilled bucket becomes tragedy. A brief smile becomes everything. Shindo said the island represented life itself. Beautiful, brutal, indifferent. And in that silence, the audience is forced to listen differently. To notice footsteps, wind, a body collapsing, not in defeat, but in necessity. The Naked Island does not explain. It shows. And in doing so, it proves something rare. You don't need words to break a heart. You only need effort and the sound of it slipping away. Aguirre, The Wrath of God, 1972. The raft drifts, the fog thickens, and one man refuses to blink. Werner Herzog didn't just film Aguirre, he dragged it out of the jungle, literally. Shot on location in Peru with a skeleton crew and no permits, the production teetered between masterpiece and meltdown. The camera floated on unstable rafts, equipment sank. The cast got sick, Klaus Kinski nearly quit or worse. And yet, the film pulses with clarity. Kinski's portrayal of Aguirre, equal parts messiah and madman, is volcanic. Every gesture burns with obsession. He barely speaks, but when he does, it's with the calm of someone already lost. Herzog shot the whole thing deep in the Peruvian rainforest with almost no crew and no backup plan. Klaus Kinski, playing Aguirre, fought with everyone, including Herzog, who threatened to shoot him if he walked off set. Monkeys attacked. Rafts flipped. People got sick. At one point, Herzog literally stole the camera to keep filming. The result? A fever dream on water. No exposition, no rescue. Just Kinski staring down the barrel of his own madness while the river keeps moving. Nothing in this film feels staged. The fog, the silence, the drifting bodies. It's all too real. The raft scenes weren't performances. They were survival. And Kinski? He doesn't play Aguirre. He becomes a man who believes the world was made to obey him, even as it disappears around him. No battles, no victory, just ambition unraveling, frame by frame. This isn't a rise and fall. It's a long, slow collapse, and you can't look away. Hell in the Pacific, 1968. No speeches, no sidekicks, no translator, just 2 men, 2 enemies, stranded on the same island, with no shared language and no idea what to make of each other. Hell in the Pacific strips war down to instinct. Lee Marvin and Toshiro Mifune, both real military veterans, carried that weight into every stare, every grunt, every movement. Their performances, almost entirely physical. Tension comes from gestures, rhythms, proximity, because in this story, survival demands communication without words. Director John Borman chose to isolate the shoot in the rock islands of Palau, surrounding the actors with open water and harsh terrain. No sets, no sound stages. The weather controlled everything. What made it into the film, rain, waves, insects, that was real. Cinematographer Conrad Hall used natural light and long lenses to frame the men like animals circling each other. One scratches markings into sand. The other builds a raft in silence. Cooperation flickers, then fades. And without dialogue to guide us, the film becomes a mirror. What would you do? Because when war disappears and uniforms rot in the salt air, what's left? Memory? Pride? Rage? Hell in the Pacific never hands you answers. It only shows two men learning to fight when there's nothing left to fight for. Jeremiah Johnson. He doesn't talk much, but everything he feels, you see on his face. Isn't about triumph, it's about transformation. How a man goes into the mountains one way and comes out changed forever. Robert Redford gives the best performance of his career, and it's not built on monologues or speeches. It's built on silence, on stillness, on the weight in his eyes as the seasons and the losses pile up. Shot on location in the Utah Rockies, the production battled real snow, real storms, real wilderness. Redford lived it. He did the hunting scenes, rode through blizzards, and helped shape the film's stripped-down script. You feel that in every frame. He barely speaks. He doesn't have to. Sidney Pollack films nature as both savior and executioner. The snow isn't pretty. It's crushing. The trees don't shelter, they isolate. And Redford, wrapped in furs and silence, becomes part of it. There's no soundtrack telling you what to feel. Only wind, creaking wood, and the slow crunch of boots through deep, merciless snow. This isn't a hero's journey. It's a man getting carved down by grief, solitude, and revenge until there's nothing left but instinct. Redford's performance? It's quiet devastation. And once you've seen that final stare across the mountain, you don't forget it. Not this man, not this movie. Walkabout, 1971. Nicholas Rugg's Walkabout opens with an act that fractures comfort, and then it leaves us stranded, narratively and physically, alongside two children in the middle of the Australian outback. There's no score swell, no plot setup, just open land and escalating uncertainty. What follows is part survival story, part cultural meditation. But the film is more interested in dissonance than resolution. It doesn't explain relationships, it studies gestures. The Aboriginal teen, played by David Gulpil in his first screen role, brings a quiet stability that contrasts the children's passive panic. He doesn't speak English, and they make no attempt to learn his language. Yet everything meaningful in the film happens in the silence between them. Rogue's direction lingers on images rather than actions. Bugs, scorched landscapes, water dripping from rock. Time passes without explanation. There are long sequences with no dialogue at all, and when people do speak, it rarely helps. The film's most memorable scene, often singled out for its nudity, works not because it's provocative, but because it reveals how utterly disconnected these characters are, even in vulnerable moments. The film doesn't resolve that distance. It lets it sit there, refusing easy metaphor, refusing sentimental payoff. Walkabout is sometimes described as a fable, but it resists that clarity. It's too ambiguous, too specific, and that's why it endures. It doesn't guide the viewer. It leaves them, like the characters, to navigate what comes next alone. It almost got canned. Deliverance was shot on a modest $2 million budget, and a script that felt more like a slow-burn nightmare than an action movie. Director John Boorman didn't flinch. He threw his cast straight into the Georgia wilderness. Literally. The actors, Jon Voight, Burt Reynolds, Ned Beatty, and Ronnie Cox, did their own stunts. Every fall, every rapid, every bruise. There's a reason it all feels so tense. No green screen, no backlot, just water, rocks, and silence. The sound design is eerie. Long stretches with no score. Just birds, wind, a paddle slicing through current. Snap. Something cracks the calm and your pulse jumps. Reynolds pushed hard to make it real. He even insisted on going over a waterfall himself. Cracked his tailbone for it. The studio begged for body doubles. Boorman refused. He wanted pain on camera. And it paid off. Audiences weren't prepared. They came in expecting an adventure. They left shaken. It made over $40 million, 20 times its budget. And it changed how the industry viewed survival films. No more polished heroes. No more glamorous danger. Deliverance showed what it looks like when a man thinks he's in control, until the wilderness answers back. Years later, Boorman said he never wanted to make another film like it. Too much risk, too much truth, too close to breaking. And that's why it still echoes today. 10 films, all tension, grit, and quiet devastation. No spoon-fed dialogue, no safety net, just men pushed to the edge and stripped down to something primal. If that kind of cinema speaks, stick around. VintageVerse digs where others don't.